Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is who's really running the show? So many of our responses and behaviors are dictated by the little child within us that was wounded at some point. And we live out these behaviors and reactions, often directed by a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, and thinking that we're being reasonable. So anyway, it should be a really interesting conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together, vigorously rub your hands together to feel the friction, the temperature, the pressure, the motion, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. And good morning to everybody else who's here with us today on this Friday. They just keep coming. Anyway, today we're talking about who's really running the show. And where this is coming from is that I find it so fascinating in the client work that I do, that our responses to things, our reactions, our behaviors are often driven by a younger wounded part of ourselves. I can't say how many times it's shown up that something was being generated by a 4-year-old self or a 6-year-old self or a 10-year-old self. And the thing is that we make decisions in our lives as children in response to situations, and we learn behaviors then, we learn interpretations then, we learn to be afraid, we learn to be angry, we learn to fight back, we learn all kinds of things. And then those behaviors become sort of the go-to behavior. Those worldviews, those determinations become the lens through which we experience the world. And they often remain unexamined throughout our lives. So here we are at 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 or 80 even, or older, responding to things as a teenager, from the perspective and life experience of a teenager or a 6-year-old for that matter. And then that kid is driving the train for the rest of our lives in some situations. And it's a very interesting phenomena. I have seen it over and over and over again, how our inner children are directing our lives. And if you think about it, like what kind of perspective, what kind of vantage point, what kind of life experience does a 5-year-old have to be able to, or an 11-year-old have to be able to make life determinations, you know, to be able to be the one deciding for us how our life is going to be, or how to respond to a situation, or how to handle decisions that might involve many different factors. And so often we don't even recognize that that's where our response is coming from. So I think, you know, I saw, I don't know if you've watched Ted Lasso. I had a whole bunch of clients that were telling me about Ted Lasso, Ted Lasso, Ted Lasso. So I had to watch. And of course I binged and I watched the whole thing, and it's a wonderful show and I recommend it. And there was just this wonderful, wonderful scene. It was just so great. It was the woman, the main female character who owns a soccer team, and she was being invited to the table with all these other men that were going to create an elite soccer league where people would have to pay and pay for the games, and it would exclude a lot of people, and on and on. So she's sitting at this table and she's listening to them. It was all really wealthy people. They're all really wealthy because they own soccer teams, and they're all sort of colluding together to put together this pay to play kind of soccer league that would eliminate a lot of the fans' access to the game. And she's sitting at this table, and she's the only woman at the table, and she's looking around, and all of a sudden she sees all these guys as little boys, and she says, "Stop it, stop it. What do you think you're doing? These people, the fans love soccer. So many people love soccer. Don't you have enough money? What do you need more money for? To be taking away something that's making such a big difference in people." And she just scolded them like children, you know, that really needed to be realigned. And as a result, I'm not going to tell you what the result was, but it was so awesome. And as I think about it, that scene, you know, where there are all these little boys around the table, that is how we live in so many ways. You know, that it is this little child inside us that made a decision about how life was going to be, and about how we need to handle different situations. And they never grew up. And those parts of us never got a chance to grow up. And it's that's such a beautiful, powerful, vivid image. So Rosalind says, when a person constantly recounts their old story to others, I could have, should have, would have, if only I did. Instead, what is a way to help that person move beyond that story? So that's a great question, because so many people live in the past, coulda, shoulda, woulda. And the thing is that we do, it's such wasted effort. It's such wasted effort. Good morning, Robin, by the way. It's so good to have you here with us. It's wonderful to have you join us. And Rosalind also says, Ted is on my list to watch. I think it's only available on Apple TV. So I got I had a complimentary introduction month or whatever to Apple TV. And so I binged it. Anyway, back to your question, Rosalind, how do we get a person to look beyond the story of the past? So one of the ways that that I work with people regarding the past is to reframe the value, instead of the coulda, woulda, shoulda, to look at what the gift was in things having happened the way that they did, or what the opportunities were and how it shaped them to become who they are. So what's the hidden benefit? That's one way. Another way is to go back and play it out differently in your experience. It's like, I could have done it, I should have done it this way. Okay, so go back and replay it and rework it. And oftentimes that's something that's actually feasible in one's mind and heart. Another way is to be able to go back and experience it, look at it, feel the feelings. No, and what happens is oftentimes people recognize that there was no other choice, that was the only choice they could have made, being who they were at that moment. And that life is a process of learning and unfolding. So it's not always easy to get people to release their story. You know, another approach to that is to say, okay, so how is that story serving you? Does that story serve you? And to feel the feelings around it. You know, oftentimes people have deep shame, so they're trying to keep the shame at bay by saying, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. So you can, it takes courage, but if you can allow yourself to experience the feelings, then that typically allows them to move and to change, transform, release. So the things that we resist, tend to persist. And spending time on regrets, if you can spend time on regrets to heal them, that's one thing. But otherwise, you know, perpetuating the regret, it's a way to avoid living in the moment. You know, it's ironically, some people may feel it's safer to be playing back in the past about what I shoulda, woulda, coulda done, rather than facing this moment here right now. And so that's often a way that we manage to, or that we attempt to avoid what's present in this moment. So this idea of who's running the show, and the image from Ted Lasso with all these children, these young boys sitting around the table, and sort of this mama figure saying, stop that. It was just so wonderful. So much of our world is being run by little boys and little girls, I think, that were wounded or are misdirected based on childhood trauma. So being able to heal those kids, that's a big deal. You know, not just upbraiding them, but looking to bring them to wholeness. I think there's, as we become aware of the power of our childhood in our lives. So I have one client who had a really traumatic childhood and has said, I don't want to go back there. You know, I suffered enough. I don't want to go deal with that. I don't want to deal with that kid. You know, let her do her thing. I don't want anything to do with her, essentially. The thing is that that kid is running the show. Like, it is so clear that that wounded kid is pulling all the strings, is creating such havoc and emotional disruption and upset. And until this person is able to connect with that child and develop a relationship and help to heal that kid, I'm afraid they're going to continue being tortured. You know, it's so interesting when, if you look in your life, look at places where you get really activated. Look at places you get really activated, and those moments provide really, really valuable clues to something that is calling to be healed. Because it's like when we fly into a rage, that might not be your thing, but if there's something that triggers a rage in you that even you can see is disproportionate, that's a big clue that there's something calling for healing behind that. And so yesterday I had a session with a client where they just got into such a rage over, not with me, but over an incident. Like the rage, the fury was so disproportionate to the trigger. And as we explored it, it was so interesting because their experience was finding like this desolate plain of just gray, dusty dirt. And they were digging and digging, and it was still just gray, dusty dirt all the way down. And they felt this obligation to be continuing to dig in the dusty dirt until they recognized, you know what? There's nothing here. There's nothing here. There's green grass over there. I can get out of this dirt pit and I can just go over to the green grass. And in going over to the green grass, they allowed themselves a level of transformation that wasn't previously available to them, where they felt like they had to keep digging in the dirt pit instead of just going literally where the grass is greener, right? Like there's a time to go where the grass is greener, and to give ourselves permission to do that, right? um I love these sessions because so many wonderful symbols come up. You know, they saw this instance where they were really angry and hollering at somebody, and all of a sudden this bull came and knocked them down. And you know, I didn't get to discuss the symbology with them, but you know, it was, the whole thing was about being bullied. And here was this bull that showed up, and you know, then this gray dirt dusty pit and the grass being greener somewhere else and going to where there was greener grass, like giving themselves permission. So our other than conscious minds are so brilliant at generating wonderful symbols for us, um, wonderful ways to communicate to us. So I keep at, it's funny, when I was a little kid, I haven't thought of this in years, but when I was a little kid, I don't know how old I was, maybe 5 or 6. My parents got me this wonderful little, it, it, I don't even remember it vividly, but it it was like a car console, dashboard and steering wheel and whatever. And I just had this flash of driving this thing. And I remember how important being able to learn to drive was to me. Like, it was my wings, my ticket to freedom, to be able to drive. And it was really important to be able to drive, and to be able to drive well, and have the freedom to take myself places. And I still, to this day, I still really enjoy driving. And I'm going to be going on this very long road trip, 3,000 miles from East Coast to West Coast, and then another 3,000 miles back. And as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about how much I am looking forward to it as a meditation, a retreat in its way, to be able to just be present without all kinds of other distractions, to be present with my thoughts. Often when I drive in silence, no radio, no external noise. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, the little child in us. So there's, who's running the show, who's driving the train. It might be my 6-year-old who's doing a lot of that driving. I don't know. But all of this is really a conversation of living an examined life, bringing things to awareness so that we don't remain robots. We don't, so that we're not at the effect of decisions that were made when we were children, that had the wisdom of a child behind it. Not to say that there's not wisdom of a child, there is. However, that wisdom gets to be informed by greater life experience. We get to bring it into the light to evaluate it and determine if it's still in our best interests to be operating out of those perspectives and vantage points that were cultivated at a very young age. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of going back to a place that you remembered as a child and finding that it's not nearly as big as you remembered it. The being a child, we have a whole different size relativity to things, right? So things seem so much bigger. I used to, as a little kid, I used to climb under the coffee table at my grandparents' house, waiting for my grandfather to come home so I could jump out and surprise him. And so I remembered that coffee table was spacious underneath, and looking back, it was tiny. I have this table in my living room that has a centerpiece that comes out. So if there's a hole in the table, and my nephews used to climb under there and pop out of the middle of the table. And these guys now, they're like over 6 foot tall, and the thought of them being under that table is just very, very funny. And again, we get to look at perspectives. Things change pretty radically with our perspectives, and how appropriate is it to be carrying that little child's perspective unexamined into our adulthood, right? The fears that get cultivated as children, the rage, the reactivity, the sadness, I imagine you have songs that move you from when you were growing up. There was a song, every time I'd hear it, I would cry, and I haven't heard it in years and years. It was A Horse with No Name. I think. I don't know why it made me cry. But anyway, I don't think it does anymore. But those kinds of programmed behaviors make us, without examining them, without recognizing them, they can make us robotic. They make us just a pile of different buttons that when they get pushed, we do our reaction just like a little machine. And so we get to revisit those things and look. So Rosalind says, we made the choices of what we thought were in our best decision at the time. Live and learn from your experience, grow and apply. Use it as your witness to help someone else along their journey. So I so appreciate that, Rosalind. I think that we get to be recognizing and learning from our experience to be able to share with other people and help them on their journey, for sure. The thing is about these reactions and behaviors, it's not that we made a choice. I want that to land. I don't think we necessarily made a choice. I think we became reactive. Like a lot of the things that we believe because we were taught that. It was the reality that was presented to us. And we never knew that there even was a choice. And that's why we get to be excavating these beliefs and behaviors and sources and triggers, because so many of them were adopted or activated without us ever having any awareness of them whatsoever. And so it takes deliberate and courageous effort to go and explore these things. And it's an effort that pays back in spades with freedom and real sovereignty and authenticity and true choice. So that's the encouragement for today, is to dig in and notice, when you have a heavy duty reaction to something, question it, say, oh my gosh, instead of judging it, instead of like going forward like a freight train, stand back and say, what in the world's going on here? What is this about? What triggered that? What's going on behind the scenes? And that might give you an opportunity to find greater freedom. So with that, I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And as always, it is such a deep privilege and pleasure to be spending this time with you and expanding our awareness and our ways of being. Till next time, so much love to you.